The situation in Gaza may lead to spread of deadly diseases. More than 300 Rohingya refugees stranded in Indonesia. Good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. I'm Mohana Priya and you're watching World Today. The impact of the Israel-Hamas conflict on Gaza's healthcare sector has been catastrophic, and conditions in the city are ideal for the spread of deadly diseases. As such, the World Health Organization's Executive Board adopted a resolution calling for immediate unimpeded humanitarian access to Gaza after the WHO chief said medics were facing unimaginable challenges.
One is safe in Gaza. As more and more people move to a smaller and smaller area, overcrowding combined with the lack of adequate food, water, shelter and sanitation are creating the ideal conditions for disease to spread.
The 34 countries on the board adopted the resolution brought forward by Afghanistan, Morocco, Qatar and Yemen by consensus. In addition to calling for immediate humanitarian relief, the resolution demanded the granting of exit permits for patients. The resolution seeks the supply and replenishment of medicine and medical equipment to the civilian population and ensure access to medical treatment. The special session was called by 17 of the 34 countries on the executive board, which advises the WHO's decision-making body and then implements its decisions. During the meeting, WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus also said he deeply regretted that the United Nations Security Council could not agree on a ceasefire following a US veto. Several thousand Moroccans demonstrated in Rabat to condemn genocide in the Gaza Strip and demand the end of diplomatic relations with Israel. Demonstrators waving Palestinian flags marched against war crimes and genocide in Gaza and calling for an end to Israel's occupation of Palestinian territories. They marched through the city behind a huge banner denouncing the Holocaust in Gaza and calling for ties with Israel to be repealed. Morocco and Israel established full relations in 2020 in exchange for the United States recognizing Moroccan sovereignty over the disputed territory of Western Sahara. Since the war began, huge demonstrations across Morocco have called for an end to the North African country's diplomatic normalization with Israel, whereas before 7th October, opposition to normalization was limited. At the end of November, Morocco's King Mohammed VI condemned Israel's flagrant violation of international law and humanitarian values in its attacks against Hamas. In a message addressed to the United Nations, he said he rejected Israel's policy of collective punishment, forced displacement, and any attempt to impose new facts on the ground. Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky will travel to Washington on Tuesday to meet President Joe Biden and plead his case before Republicans, balking at sending more money for his fight against Russia amid warnings that aid will run out in weeks. An aide for Mike Johnson said the new Republican Speaker for the House of Representatives, who has been trying to tie Ukraine aid to funding for U.S. border security, will also meet with the Ukrainian leader. Democratic Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Republican Leader Mitch McConnell likewise invited Zelensky to speak at an all-senators meeting on Tuesday morning. Biden and Zelensky will discuss Ukraine's urgent need as it fights off a Russian invasion and the vital importance of the United States' continued support at this critical moment. The Ukrainian presidency said the meeting will focus on key issues such as joint projects on the production of weapons and air defense systems, as well as the coordination of efforts between the countries in the coming year. Republican senators last week blocked $106 billion in emergency aid, primarily for Ukraine and Israel, after conservatives balked at the exclusion of immigration reforms they had demanded as part of the package. It was a setback for Biden, who had urged lawmakers to approve the funds. Oil producers Saudi Arabia and Iraq stood their ground at United Nations climate talks as they faced pressure to drop their opposition to a phase out of fossil fuels at COP28 in Dubai. Now, with less than 48 hours left before the conference's official end, COP28 President Sultan Ahmed Al Jaber invited ministers to give their views in a traditional Gulf Arab meeting held in a circle. While Sultan Ahmed Al Jaber called the gathering in an effort to produce a compromise, warning that failure is not an option, countries held firm in their positions. The European Union and members of Pacific Island states threatened by rising seas reiterated their calls for a phase-out of fossil fuels. Saudi Arabia, the world's top oil exporter, however, has voiced its opposition to any phase-out or phase-down of fossil fuels. An Iraqi representative was more direct, saying his country was against any mention of global sectorial targets, including a phase-out or phase-down of fossil fuels. Sultan Ahmed Al Jaber, the head of the National Oil Company of United Arab Emirates, has said that action on fossil fuels must be part of any deal at COP28. Scientists say the world must end its use of fossil fuels, which are responsible for the bulk of greenhouse gas emissions, to avoid the most catastrophic climate scenarios. At least 17 people were injured when two trains crashed into each other at low speed in northern Italy. The accident between a high-speed train and a regional train occurred on the line between Bologna and Rimini, specifically between the city of Faenza and commune of Forli. A spokesman for national train operator Trenitalia explained that it was a collision at a very low speed. An investigation is underway to determine the cause of the accident. Photographs published by firefighters indicated the two trains had crashed head-on, but the front of the regional train was still intact. Transport Minister Matteo Salvini, who is also Deputy Prime Minister, said he was following the situation and also confirmed the injuries were minor. He said he was seeking rapid information on what happened and potential responsibility. The crash came 3 months after 5 railway workers died after being hit by a train during overnight maintenance on the Milan-Turin line on 31st August. The previous deadly incident on Italy's railways was in 2020, when 2 rail workers died and 31 passengers were injured when a train derailed before dawn near Lodi, south of Milan. And in January 2018, 3 women died and about 100 people were injured when a packed train derailed near Milan, an accident blamed on poor track maintenance. A rock salt mine in northeastern Brazil that officials warn is at risk of imminent collapse partially ruptured on Sunday, though the area had already been evacuated. Residents of Alagoas state capital Maceió have been nervously watching chemicals giant Braskem's Mine 18 since city officials declared a high alert on 29th November, warning it risked collapsing and causing a potentially massive tragedy. Braskem said an atypical movement had been detected at the mine and that it continues collaborating with the authorities. Video aired on Brazilian media showed large brown bubbles burbling on the surface of the water at the moment of the rupture in the mine, which sits mostly under the lagoon. The Maceió Emergency Response Department emphasizes the mine and its surroundings are unoccupied and there is no risk to people. Maceió has had city life upended by Mine 18 since residents were forced to begin evacuating the area around it in 2019 after cracks started to appear in streets and buildings. An area of 14,000 buildings that was once home to 55,000 people has now been turned into a ghost town. The earth has recently been sinking in the area around the mine. Ecologists warn a collapse could cause an environmental disaster for the lagoon and its surrounding ecosystem. Coming up, Western African leaders continue sanctions imposed on Niger. Stay tuned. More than 300 Rohingya refugees were stranded on the coast of western Indonesia on Sunday after being adrift at sea for weeks. Now, the latest arrivals add to a recent surge of Myanmar's Muslim minority reaching Indonesia amid a social media backlash and pushback from locals in Aceh, the westernmost region where most boats dock. A group of 180 refugees from the persecuted Myanmar minority arrived by boat at 3 a.m. local time on a beach in the PD Regency of Aceh province. Another boat carrying 135 refugees landed in neighbouring Aceh Besar Regency hours later after being adrift at sea for more than a month. Prior to Sunday's arrivals, the United Nations Refugee Agency said that 1,200 Rohingyas had landed ashore in Indonesia since November. Indonesian President Joko Widodo said he suspects human trafficking is behind the recent escalation in boat arrivals and has promised to work with international organizations to handle the issue. For years, Rohingyas have left Myanmar, where they are generally regarded as foreign interlopers from South Asia, denied citizenship and subjected to abuse. When seas are calmer between November and April every year, members of the persecuted minority leave on wooden boats for neighbouring Thailand and Muslim-majority Bangladesh, Malaysia and Indonesia. 5 members of Bangladesh's main opposition party have died in prison in the past 2 weeks as thousands took to the streets before next month's general election. Now, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party is boycotting the 7th January vote, leaving the re-election of incumbent Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina a foregone conclusion. The party said its entire leadership and more than 20,000 politicians have been arrested over the past 5 weeks in an unprecedented crackdown that followed a massive opposition rally in the capital on the 28th October. Police have rejected the arrest figures while not disclosing how many opposition activists have been detained. The Bangladesh Nationalist Party has also tallied 5 deaths in custody among its activists over the past 2 weeks. Assistant Inspector General of Prisons Sazad Hussain confirmed the death of 5 people in jail, but rejected the allegations they were tortured. While critics accuse Bangladesh authorities of targeting opposition figures to sideline them from the upcoming election, the government said it is committed to holding free and fair polls. Hasina has overseen a period of prolonged economic growth over 15 years in power, but there has been international alarm over democratic backsliding and thousands of extrajudicial killings. West African leaders kept sanctions imposed on Niger after a July military coup and demanded progress towards a short transition to civilian rule before easing the measures. The Economic Community of West African States, or ECOWAS, leaders met for a summit in Nigeria's capital Abuja with the region in crisis after coups in Mali, Burkina Faso, Guinea and Niger since 2020 and 2 attempted coups elsewhere in recent weeks. International attention has focused on the region's most recent coup in Niger when troops ousted President Mohamed Bazoum on 26 July, prompting ECOWAS to impose tough sanctions and suspend trade.
The authority will progressively ease the sanctions imposed on Niger. Failure by the CNSP to comply with the outcomes of the engagement with the committee, ECOWAS shall maintain all sanctions, including the use of force, and will request African Union and all other partners to enforce the targeted sanctions on members of the CNSP and their associates.
ECOWAS called for Bazoum's immediate return to power, but Niger's rulers have kept the ousted president in detention and want up to 3 years for a transition back to civilian rule. ECOWAS has also left on the table the last option of a military intervention in Niger, though analysts say that appears increasingly unlikely. Argentina's President Javier Milei took office with a stark warning to citizens to brace themselves for painful austerity measures as he seeks to cut spending and curb triple-digit inflation, all with empty coffers. Latin America's third largest economy is on its knees after decades of debt and financial mismanagement, with annual inflation at 140% and 40% living in poverty. Milei warned of spending cuts equivalent to 5% of gross domestic product in a country where millions receive welfare handouts and have become accustomed to hefty energy and transport subsidies.
Luego de dicho cuadro de situación, que a todas luces parece irremontable, debe quedar claro que no hay alternativa posible al ajuste. Tampoco hay lugar a la discusión entre shock y gradualismo.
Milei's inauguration caps a meteoric rise for the former television panelist who entered politics only 2 years ago. His rants against the thieving establishment fired up voters and drew comparisons to leaders like Brazil's ex-president Jair Bolsonaro and former US President Donald Trump. Among the questions hanging over Argentines' heads in the coming days will be whether Milei will devaluate the strictly controlled peso and loosen the currency controls which have birthed a multitude of dollar exchanges. Emergency crews worked on Sunday to check, clear and restore power to areas hard hit by severe storms and tornadoes that claimed the lives of at least 6 people and left a trail of destruction in Tennessee over the weekend. Drone footage showed houses with their roofs torn off and trucks overturned by the storm in the city of Clarksville in Montgomery County, one of the hardest hit areas. The Red Cross set up a shelter at a local high school in Clarksville to offer assistance to people who may have been temporarily displaced by the tornadoes. Shelters were also opened in Nashville and its suburbs. The 6 fatalities were reported by officials in Montgomery County and in Nashville. According to the police, a toddler was one of the 3 victims of the storms in the Nashville area, and 13 people in stable condition were transported to nearby hospitals. In the city of Clarksville, about 65 kilometers away, 2 adults and 1 child were killed by a tornado. Coming up next in sports, Girona stunned Barcelona to move to top spot in the La Liga. Stay with us. We begin with news on the local football front. Team Harimau Malaya created ripples in the local scene following their impressive performance recently. It has been an impressive year for the national team as they close out 2023 with strings of victories in international fixtures. After failing to qualify for the ASEAN Football Federation Cup early this year, the national team regained their composure by winning 4 subsequent matches against Turkmenistan and Hong Kong in March. They carried the winning momentum into the match against Papua New Guinea in June before drawing to Syria and China last September. Malaysia continued its unbeaten run when they beat India 4-2 in the 2023 Pesta Bola Merdeka. However, Tajikistan snapped Malaysia's momentum in the final match and clinched the title. Unwilling to go down, Kim Panggon's men redeemed themselves in the World Cup and Asian Cup qualifiers, recorded back-to-back wins against Kyrgyzstan and Taiwan, bagging 6 points. Last month, Harimau Malaya climbed up 7 rungs to secure 130th position in the world in the latest update from the FIFA rankings. All eyes are now on Malaysia and how they will fare in the 2023 Asian Cup, slated to kick off in Qatar January next year, which will see the national team take on football giants such as South Korea, Jordan and Bahrain. In the La Liga, shock Spanish title contenders Girona earned a historic 4-2 win over rivals Barcelona to move top of the La Liga. Girona defeated the Catalan rivals for the first time ever in the top flight in a pulsating battle to rise 2 points above Real Madrid, second after their 1-1 draw at Real Betis on Saturday. In La Liga, for only the 4th season in their history, they played without any fear of their more illustrious neighbours and took the lead early on as the game seesawed deliciously from end to end. The visitors split the 27-time champions open with a lethal counter-attack, with Ukrainian winger Viktor Siganov feeding his compatriot Artem Dobyek to slam home in the 12th minute. Unperturbed, Barcelona levelled quickly through Lewandowski with 35-year-old hitting home Rafinha's corner to end a run of 3 matches without a goal. Valerie Fernandez extended Girona's lead with 10 minutes remaining before Ilkay Gundogan netted to set up a frantic finale. Veteran striker Christian Stuani struck from close range in stoppage time to wrap up a stunning victory which reaffirms the Minnows' title dream. Champions Barcelona are 4th after Atletico Madrid, 3rd, beat Almeria early on, and Xavi's side trailed Girona by 7 points. And in the English Premier League, Tottenham won for the first time in 6 matches as Richarlison's double inspired a 4-1 rout of dismal Newcastle this morning. Since topping the standings after beating Crystal Palace on 27th of October, Tottenham had lost 4 of their next 5 games to squander the momentum from their blistering start to the season. Destiny Udogie put Tottenham ahead in the first half in North London, and Brazil striker Richarlison doubled the lead before the break. Richarlison netted again in the second half, and Son Heung-min converted a late penalty as 5th placed Tottenham moved within 3 points of 4th placed Manchester City. Joelinton's goal in the final seconds was no consolation for outclassed Newcastle. Following Thursday's 3-0 drubbing at Everton, this was another dispiriting result for Newcastle, who sit 4 points behind Tottenham in 7th. It was the worst possible preparation for their Wednesday's decisive Champions League group stage clash with AC Milan. Spurs boss Ange Postecoglou lauded Son Heung-min for his leadership in Tottenham's victory against Newcastle.
Yeah, Sonny really sort of set the tone for us early on. Wherever he got the ball, he was really positive with it, and that's what you need from leadership. And I think the rest of the lads sort of, fed off that, and we were a lot more threatening in that front third than we have been. And I thought got the goals we deserved. Again, probably could have had a couple more at least, but really pleased with that aspect of it.
Postecoglou's attacking tactics were branded as naive during their losing streak, but the Australian stuck to his guns and was rewarded with a goal spree at Newcastle's expense. Meanwhile, Newcastle's Eddie Howe said his side was not in their best form following difficult fixtures facing Everton and Tottenham away from home in a very short period of time.
The players have done so well to keep going in what was a very congested period of games with very hard fixtures for us. When you go back to looking sort of back to Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester United, Bournemouth, that run of games with very difficult fixtures, and then we've just Everton and Tottenham away in a very short period of time. We haven't been at our best. I think that's very evident for everybody to see. I think the players have given everything that they could give.
Over in Luton, Bernardo Silva and Jack Grealish scored 3 minutes apart as Manchester City came from behind to beat Luton Town 2-1 on Sunday and registered their first victory in 5 league games. The home fans were celebrating at halftime at Roche's Kenilworth Road after Elijah Adebayo rose to meet a cross from Andros Townsend and headed in the opener seconds before the break. But after numerous City near misses, Silva recorded in the 62nd minute when he curled a low left-footed strike into the far corner past goalkeeper Thomas Kaminski. Grealish completed his comeback 3 minutes later when Julian Alvarez set a cross across the face of a goal that the 28-year-old stretched to slot in. City arrived at Luton reeling from 3 draws and a midweek defeat by Aston Villa. Now, the win kept the champions, who were missing striker Erling Haaland through injury, in 4th place on 33 points, 4 shy of leaders Liverpool, in a crowded title fight, as Luton remained in the drop zone on 9 points, 4 adrift of 17th place. In Goodison Park, Everton beat woeful Chelsea 2-0, lifting it from relegation zone with 13 points in the bag. Abdoulaye Doucouré scored in his 100th Premier League appearance for Everton, and substitute Lewis Dobbin netted a late second goal, inflicting a 3rd away defeat in a row on the mid-table London club. Dwight McNeil surged forward with the ball in the 54th minute and slipped a pass to Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Chelsea goalkeeper Robert Sanchez saved the one-on-one chance, but Ducour drilled the rebound into the far corner of the net. Academy product Dobbin scored his first league goal in an Everton shirt when he smashed home a loose ball from a corner in stoppage time to seal the 3 points. Chelsea slipped to 12th in the table with 19 points from 16 games and 14 points behind in the race for Champions League qualification places. Everton, vastly improved with their shape and defensive robustness in recent weeks, claimed a third clean sheet in a row, and it was another impressive performance to follow Thursday's 3-0 home win over Newcastle United. Now, Everton have filed an appeal against their 10-point deduction by the Premier League. The Merseyside club were docked points with immediate effect last month after being found to have breached profitability and sustainability rules relating to losses. Earlier this month, the Premier League said Everton admitted that they had breached profitability and sustainability rules during a hearing. The resultant sanction was the biggest of its kind since the creation of the Premier League. The deduction, which saw Everton drop from 14th in the standings into the relegation zone with 4 points, was labelled wholly disproportionate and unjust by the club. Everton fans protested the deduction during last week's 3-0 loss to Manchester United, with thousands of supporters holding up bright pink signs at Goodison Park that read "Corrupt" under the Premier League's lion head logo before the teams were introduced. Last week, Everton fan group, the 1878s, flew a banner that read "Premier League equal to corrupt" over the Etihad Stadium during Manchester City's 1-1 draw with Liverpool. And moving on to motorsport, after 12 hours of back and forth battles, Mercedes-AMG Group M Racing came out on top in the Gulf 12 hours at Abu Dhabi's Yas Marina circuit on Sunday. Now, the number 99 Mercedes-AMG GT3 car started in pole position and was driven to victory by Mauro Engel, Lucas Stolz and Mikael Grenier. It was the third time a Mercedes crossed first in 13 editions of the prestigious West Asia event. MotoGP legend Valentino Rossi and teammates Dries Vanthoor and Nick Yeloli kept the pressure on the Mercedes in Team WRT's number 46 BMW M4 GT3 right till the end, finishing just 12.811 seconds off the winners after 348 laps. Mercedes-AMG Team 2Cs placed third in the number 14 Mercedes-AMG GT3 with Jules Gounon, Maximilian Goetz and Fabian Schiller behind the wheel. A total of 16 cars crossed the finish line following 12 challenging hours of racing. And with that, we reach the end of today's bulletin. In our top story today, WHO warns of catastrophic situation in Gaza may lead to the spread of deadly diseases. Do join us again tonight at 8:30 p.m. for more news on TV1 and Saluran Berita RTM. I'm Mohana Priya. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Goodbye for now.